Hello, everyone. My name is Lily Huang. I am the lead of Ultra High Net Worth Client Group of Northern California in HSBC Private Bank. I'm your host of Beyond Virtual panel today, Rethinking Recovery Through Innovations. Let's welcome our panelists. Two incredible thinkers. We have Doug Merritt, CEO and President of Splunk. We have Quinn Lee, Global Head of Qualcomm Ventures. Welcome, Quinn.
Thank you, Lily. Appreciate the opportunity.
Quinn, so I know that many of us are very familiar with what Qualcomm does. So for our audience who are not as familiar with Qualcomm Ventures, can you please share with us what do you do and why?
Absolutely. So Qualcomm is known as the leader in wireless technology development. So we've pioneered technologies like 3G, 4G, and now 5G is being deployed. So we're the Qualcomm Ventures is the venture capital arm for Qualcomm. So we invest broadly in the Qualcomm ecosystem in companies that can leverage the technology that Qualcomm's developing, such as 5G, artificial intelligence, IoT, and automotive. So we invest in these companies with the idea to work with these startup companies to help to expand our ecosystem. And we invest globally, so we have a portfolio of about 150 active companies spanning across 7 different regions around the world. So outside the US, we invest in China, India, Europe, Israel, Latin America, as well as Korea. And we've been doing this for the last 20 years. In fact, last year was our 20-year anniversary. And we have invested in some of the very innovative companies like Zoom, like Waze, like Fitbit, Cloudflare, Xiaomi in China. So a variety of very, very innovative and great startups, and have since become very, very large companies.
Very well integrated into the global innovation ecosystem. So the pandemic has forced us to rethink how we connect, how we work, and how we live. What can you please share with us what have changed for you after in the post-pandemic time, and what remains the same?
Yeah, I think all of us have to readjust how we work and how we live as well since the pandemic, right? So from at the beginning of the pandemic, many of us started working from home, as with many companies, and we had to sort of adjust ourselves. We have a global team, so we're used to collaborate remotely, through Zoom and Teams meetings with all the international colleagues around the globe. So we had to do that at a increased level, even with the US team, because we couldn't go to the office. But I think as the pandemics, I think getting towards the end of the pandemic, with a lot of people vaccinated and with new therapeutic drugs that's coming out of the market, I think the world is going to come back to a little bit more of pre-pandemic levels. Although I think the work environment is going to be a little bit different. I don't think it will be exactly the same as pre-pandemic. I think you're going to have a hybrid work environment where people will go to work for maybe a couple of days a week to get together with a team to do the collaboration you need for the in-person interactions and the collaboration. But this virtual work environment, I think, will stay for quite some time. I've gone to actually 2 conferences in person more recently. So I think these in-person events are coming back. And I think a lot of these in-person events, particularly the networking opportunities, the ability to talk to people in person, are very important. So I think some of those events events, conferences are coming back, and it will probably be more and more in 2022.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of pent-up demand for social connection, which we have missed, right, for the last 18 years. So talk about remote working. Many companies has transformed into remote or hybrid working. What do you think it has impacted the company's culture and productivity?
Yeah, I think from what we've seen, as far as Qualcomm's concerned, and also our group, we've seen actually not a decrease in productivity. In fact, some areas productivity has increased because there are times that people save from having to travel to work, and maybe there's traffic, and there's a lot of time savings just by being in front of the computer. So the productivity, we actually have seen some increases. And I think it also comes to, as we see, as this pandemic is rolling out, the importance to have high quality, reliable communications, right? So you need to have very robust, whether it's Wi-Fi at home or maybe if you're on the go, to have high speed, like a 5G network, that you'll be able to do the video calls at home reliably, get on Zoom, maybe even you're in a car on the go. So I think the importance of connectivity, broadband communication becomes very, very important, which allows people not just to connect through work, collaborate with colleagues and so forth, but even for personal connections, right? We were investing in Zoom, but Zoom, I think, became a household name during the pandemic because everybody's using Zoom for happy hours, for other things, not just even work, but even for personal, in personal lives, right? So I think a lot of these collaboration tools and technology really allows people to be able to connect virtually. Like I'm talking with you on Zoom now, it's almost as if we're in person. Not quite, but almost. So I think a lot of these tools, the ability to get people to get connected with the connectivity technology that we developed, like 5G and other broadband connectivities, really allows people to connect, have this almost live virtual experience, if you will. And as we were looking forward, there's a lot of other technology coming to the market, like XR technology. Now we talked about, metaverse, and different platforms are being built along with the connectivity. I think allows people to engage in many different ways.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that we have seen the company Zoom transform into a phenomenon, right? It's no longer just a solution, a company that they provide. It's been part of our life. Yeah, so with all this, economic, booming and recovery, what are you optimistic about, and what still worries you?
I think I'm generally, think that largely the pandemic, as far as in the US, is probably behind us, assuming there's no more new sort of surges of viruses. I think with the vaccine rates pretty high now across the population, as well as there's new therapeutic or treatment of the COVID-19. I think the world would be very different, or more back to normal in the next year or so, 2022, right? So I think we're overall very, and then as you see in the public markets also have done very well, and we have many companies, companies like Matterport, for example. They're doing 3D models of one of their markets, real estate. So we actually seen an increase in demand for their products and services during pandemic, where people are looking at houses online. The real estate market obviously done very well. So we've seen their services and business have really benefited a lot during the pandemic. I think we'll see that trend continue. And then the other area we have spent a lot of time on is in the supply chain area. We've invested in companies really trying to help companies to provide visibility in the supply chain. So if you, as a consumer, you expect Amazon delivery to show up, next day, and exactly where that parcel is, right, after you order it, right? And then many other companies also needs similar type of visibility. So we've invested in companies like Airspace Technologies, which provides time sensitive and high value goods, provides the entire end-to-end service, allows the customer to have visibility of the shipment wherever they are in transit. And then companies like Kites, which provides entire visibility to enterprises as they ship their products across the globe. So we've really seen a lot of companies come in with very innovative solutions to address a lot of the supply chain issues and so forth. So I'm very positive, actually, of the world going forward.
Yeah, so I mean, supply chain and infrastructure, they're two very timely topics that economy need to address right now. So does that mean in the future that when I order a sofa, then I will be able to track that it's in the Pacific Ocean somewhere and in which container?
I think, yeah, someday you will be able to. Yes, you'll know exactly where that sofa is after you order it.
Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to that. So in terms of innovations, right, I think innovation continue to be the engine of creating market opportunities, driving growth, differentiate winners from losers for companies. So what Qualcomm has done, what has done to create a culture that enabled innovation, and what is the role that Qualcomm Venture plays here to help with the company's ability to innovate?
Absolutely. I think it's critically important we're in a technology business, right? So we've known for our innovations in wireless technology, in particular around 3G, 4G, and now it's 5G. So I think it's critically important for any technology company to stay ahead of the game. They have to demonstrate their technology leadership. In the Qualcomm case is wireless connectivity technologies. And we've also built a Snapdragon platform, which is the premium platform for high-end smartphone devices. So I think technology leadership is critically important for any technology company, right? In our case, is connectivity, wireless solutions, and we view the world as increasing getting connected. And every device, if you think about it, they're all connected to the cloud. Smartphone being the one that's people are familiar with, and that's increasingly, well, it's always connected to the cloud. In fact, a lot of information you're getting, whether you use Facebook, Instagram, or other things, is getting information from the cloud, right? So that's probably, and then if you think about other devices like cars, for example, that's going to get increasingly connected. So we're building connectivity solutions, ADAS solutions to power automotive, right? If you think about a car, you could think about it as like a very, very high-end smartphone, maybe on wheels, one of the modern cars, right? So I think connectivity, processing capabilities, particularly on the edge, are areas that we focus on as a company. So we want to stay on the leading edge technology. We spend a lot of money in R&D to develop technologies to make sure that we're in the forefront of the technology and maintain it and the leadership. Now, from a Qualcomm Venture standpoint, what we do is we invest in companies in our ecosystem can leverage the technology we're building, right? So for example, in the case of smartphones, we invested in Xiaomi many years ago. They will obviously become a very large smartphone OEM in China, as you know. So we have a good, strong partnership with them from a technology development standpoint. We also invest in the company as well. So we created this kind of win-win situation that investing companies can leverage the technology we've built in areas like 5G, AI, automotive, and IoT. So I think we work with many, many companies across the globe in interesting use cases and ideas and building things that can leverage the technology that we built here at Qualcomm.
Yeah, interesting. So, in terms of how your portfolio company can be strategically integrated into the Qualcomm innovation ability. So especially when you are investing across the globe in China, India, over I think you mentioned about 15 countries, right? So let's talk about the 5G concept here. You mentioned about the digital infrastructure. So what is your vision on 5G? I know that Qualcomm Venture also launched a $200 million US dollar fund in 2019. So what is your vision here?
Yeah, so we think 5G is more than just applying for smartphones. We think 5G is going to get applied to many industries across the different verticals, right? So I mentioned about automotive. There's the IoT market. I think many industries will get benefit from 5G. So when we announced the fund in 2019, our goal is twofold. One is trying to find innovative use cases of the 5G technology. The 5G technology is very, very high bandwidth throughput, and it's also very low latency, right? Very reliable, high speed wireless connectivity network. So what are some of the interesting use cases can leverage that unique capability of the 5G network? So for example, cloud gaming, right? When you're playing, when the games actually happen in a cloud, when a user is playing it, whether on a PC or a laptop or a smartphone, the latency becomes super important, right? So cloud gaming is one use case, for example, of 5G technology. And then there's telemedicine, for example, that you'll be able to remotely diagnostics with a patient, have real-time communications with a patient. Those are some of the interesting use cases for 5G technology. So that's one area. The other area we think are also interesting is the network's also going through transformation. So a lot of the elements in the wireless network or infrastructure will increasingly get more software defined. So things are less, I would say, proprietary, less uh, less proprietary to a particular, maybe a vendor. Things will become more software defined, leveraging the cloud infrastructure. So there are companies like what we invested in, like Affirm Networks, Altiostar, that's leveraging the cloud infrastructure and the software capabilities to apply that to the wireless infrastructure world. So there's a lot of innovation happening in the infrastructure side as well. So we want to invest in some of these companies, both come up with new interesting use cases for 5G on the application side, as well as innovation that's happening in the networks.
Excellent. So in the related topic, I think you mentioned about 5G and AI as well. And in discussing with AI, I wanted to talk about another topic, which is inflation. So how do you address inflation impacting that your business right now? And I know that many businesses are looking into the automation and AI. So what do you think? What do you see in this AI world? What is your vision there?
Yeah, so we think AI, along with 5G, I think will have fundamental impact to a variety of industries around the world, right? So if you think about some use cases of AI, right, particularly around, so for example, retail, right? You will have stores, for example, will not have necessarily people at the cash registers, right? People be able to just go to the store and pick up item and be able to walk out without having to talk to a person, if you will, right? So
Yes.
you use basically computer vision technologies and other things to be able to recognize what is that items that person picked up in stores, and be able to essentially, as you walk out of the store, give you a receipt on here is the items you bought. So this increases a couple of things, right? One is you don't have to have the person in the stores, and the store technically can't open 24/7, right? You can go to the store anytime. You can just pick up items, right? So there's a lot of automation is going to happen in the retail space. And then that's on the storefront. And then also we see innovations in warehouses, for example, right? So a lot of item needs to be moved around in the warehouse. So robotics technologies could be very well used in warehouses to move these items around. And that just drastically increases the efficiency of warehouse, and then robots can operate at night as well, right? So there's just, I think, a lot of increased efficiency throughput when you're leveraging AI technologies to whether it's automated checkout, we invest in a company like AI-Fi, whether it's robotics, we have invested in companies like NVIDIA. Those are some just use cases of innovation that's happening in AI, in particular applied to the retail market. And then you think about like world of cars, automotive, right? Autonomous cars, I think will be there. A lot of the cars already have some capability to be self-driving or maybe self-parking, right? And that's just another big use case of AI technology. Qualcomm, we're developing an ADAS platform to be able to power many of the OEM cars to allow them to be autonomous driving. But if you think about what it takes to have a car to be autonomous driving, it's leveraging a lot of the sensor data, whether it's through cameras or other sensors like radar signals, to be able to detect any objects around the road, right? Whether it's traffic light, with other cars, whether it's pedestrians. So the amount of processing that's required and the AI technology that's used in that use case is huge. And the implication to also to society is going to be very large as well as we go forward, right? So I think AI technologies will get increasing use in a variety of industries, and I think we're very bullish. So we're looking at all sorts of use cases of AI technologies, and we're very excited about the potential for AI in a variety of industry verticals.
Interesting. Yeah. Same here. I think you mentioned about retail probably would be one of the industry that integrated or disrupt itself, with AI, integrated with AI technology. What other industry in your mind that will be the first front to integrate that technology?
I think retail for sure, robotics is another one. And we also seen some innovations happening in the industrial vertical, like in manufacturing settings, for example. We have a company called Augury that's basically using AI technologies. They put sensors on machines to be able to listen the sound or the vibration of the motors and machines and be able to figure out whether that motor or machine may fail, right? So if you can do that to prevent the downtime of the machines in the manufacturing line, the impact is huge, right? Because if the manufacturing line goes down, it's huge cost to the companies. So using technology, sensor and artificial intelligence technology to be able to predict when this machine may fail, that could save the company huge amount of money, right? So we're seeing even AI applying to industrial verticals. We call it industrial 4.0 companies like Augury that's providing innovative solutions for manufacturing, for example. So we're seeing use cases across probably every industry, in fact.
Fantastic. So, one last question. As a global investor, you talk about a lot of the very interesting portfolio company that you have invested. So during this COVID period, has your investing and portfolio management changed, or has it evolved? I think you talk about your team get together through Zoom meeting. Do you or have you invested just through Zoom meetings into your portfolio company during this period?
I think we have for sure. So we've learned, I think, meeting with entrepreneurs in person, those in-person meetings are still very important and they're coming back. But we have invested in companies where we have not met the team in person, right? So over times, I think we adapt, we adjust, we do it through Zoom, Teams, to be able to have the dialogue with the entrepreneurs, with the companies, actually without having to meet them in person. I think many other investors have done the same. So last year, we actually have seen an increased amount of investment. We actually invested a lot more companies last year than prior years. So we've learned how to do deals, virtually. And then the other thing we also have seen is many companies, given how well the public market has done, many of the companies be able to go public. So we had a lot of exits in our portfolio as well. So be able to capitalize, essentially be able to raise money in the public market. So we've seen many of the companies was able to not only raise capital, but also done very well, as I mentioned before, like companies like Matterport and others have done extremely well through this whole pandemic.
Excellent. What I heard here today is that, we are resilient as a society and as a human, and also technology enhance our ability to adapt. So, well, thank you very much, Quint. Great insight, and I look forward to chatting with you in person next time.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Lily, for the opportunity, and look forward to seeing you in person as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Huang. I'm the lead of Ultra High Net Worth Client Group, Northern California and HSBC Private Bank. I'm your host of Beyond virtual panel today. So Rethinking Recovery Through Innovations. Let's welcome our panelists today, a business leader, a visionary, and an incredible thinker, Doug Merritt, CEO and President of Splunk. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Lily. Very excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So for our clients out there, for our audience out there that who aren't as familiar with Splunk, can you please explain about what you do and why?
Absolutely. So Splunk, when we deploy Splunk, helps organizations protect themselves from cyber crimes and cyber activity, keeps their IT systems resilient and up, helps their developers be more productive and push effective code, and helps the business leaders understand data that's happening in a moment-by-moment basis around their organization, that's happening in endpoints, through Wi-Fi networks, through applications, to help them run their business more effectively. And we do that by providing a very robust set of data platform capabilities that grabs very high, dense and convoluted streaming data and pushes it into our index and other interrogation areas, and then a whole set of frameworks that helps bring that data to life.
So the last 2 years, because of pandemic, the whole world are running digitally. So I think what you talk about is very interesting, the data, the digital infrastructure, the cybersecurity. So can you talk a little bit more about what has changed for the post-pandemic world?
Yeah, I think this world of data is just fascinating to see. I've been in the data business literally since I graduated. And to see us move from very sparse but highly accurate data that would come from a relational database or be stored in a data warehouse that provides very few but highly accurate data points. And you've got to guess what happens in between, to where we are today, where with everything around us having some degree of silicon, clothing, phones, cameras, they're all observing and talking on a constant basis, talking about how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, what's occurring around them. And that provides literally millisecond by millisecond data that can complement that very sparse but high accuracy data that's going to come from an ERP system or a CRM system. As we moved into COVID and we saw incredible acceleration of digital transformation, that just gave organizations the opportunity to instrument business processes that hadn't been instrumented before, bake them into software, and make sure that they were flexible and available to customers and to employees and to partners, given that many of us were locked down and couldn't actually see each other, which just provides more data and more potential insight for these organizations. It also put a whole bunch more risk on these organizations as well.
Interesting. So let's go back to what you talk about the remote working a little bit. So on the point of data, I know that Splunk has enabled, right? You encourage your clients and help the client to continue to innovate, and for their own clients as well. So can you talk a little bit more about how have you created culture to enable that?
The innovation culture within Splunk. Well, a piece of our culture is really based in the tool itself. At the core, Splunk is a question-asking tool. We take a bunch of data that traditionally people didn't value, throw it really without a lot of curation and a lot of cleansing into this data lake, and then allow, through the power of our query language and a bunch of other fancy stuff we do, allow people to get insights, needles in the haystack, nuggets of gold out of that data. And I think that's permeated through the culture. That what we're trying to do for people is open up their imaginations. Right? There's most people, when they think about where we came from, logs and the data that is in logs, it's like, why would anyone care about that? Well, if you really play with it, there's unbelievable power and insight in that. And I think that joy of curiosity, that joy of discovery, that orientation of looking at something that nobody else really thought could be of value and finding value of it is the foundation of the culture. Around that, we have been very clear on the set of values that we have maintained since founding, that emphasizes innovation and disruption and passion and openness and fun. Those are our 5 core values. So I think that helps as well. Those tend to be disruptive, innovation-oriented values. Look at the world differently and disrupt things, have fun while you're doing it, be very open and transparent, etc. And then a lot of our overall hiring practices and development practices, I think, help with that innovation as well. We found through the years that going after the classic type of recruit the most decorated computer science grads from the best schools. It's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of the people that we have made champions at our customers, and a lot of people that are champions inside of Splunk, don't come from those backgrounds. We started serving systems administrators, and that's not where the computer science majors go. That's a whole different group of people that do that hard work of keeping all these systems up. So I think we've always taken a little orthogonal view on who we bring in. And it's amazing what that does. You wind up with people that tend to be closer to the customer, the technology, the problem. Many of them are a little bit more gritty, a little bit more entrepreneurial. They have to be more creative. They maybe didn't go to the absolute best schools and have a more well-paved road to where they're getting to. So I think it's been a lucky combination of lots of different things that has led us to be a very innovative oriented company.
That's excellent. So what I'm hearing is that you help your client to, it's like opening the Pandora box. It's about pattern recognition, how to help your client to identify the pattern, the data. So while you're working with your clients, can you describe us what type of client does Splunk have, and then how do you identify the relationship between data innovations? What do you observe? Any finding between that? Maybe you can share with our clients our audience on that.
Sure. So we are lucky enough to have everything from 5-person startup and smaller organizations to super large and powerful organizations like HSBC and other investment banks. So we really do serve the whole array of organizations. Our most aggressive customers, as far as usage of the technology, tend to be either very focused on becoming fully digital organizations, or were really born digital organizations. The initial clients that we really kind of cut our teeth on were a lot of Silicon Valley companies, the Apples, the Googles, the Netflixes, the Facebooks of the world, that had this insane abundance of data and were pioneering many of the technologies that both generated that data and tried to store that data. And we came in with a really elegant solution to help them get much more value and usage from that data. But today, that's virtually every organization, and we just saw that the past 20 months.
Right.
There are small little boutiques in my town that are now completely online, highly conversant with Stripe and Shopify and companies that they never even thought of before, because they had to pivot so aggressively. And those organizations have the same cybersecurity needs, the same understanding of customer usage patterns and effective development needs to make sure they're serving their customers, and then the same potential business insight needs, now that they've got much better signal of what's happening within their ecosystem as these interactions are all online, that help them optimize pricing or optimize availability, change packaging. We have one customer down in Latin America that's one of the largest e-commerce providers that empowers their product managers on a literally minute-by-minute basis to be able to change pricing, availability, packaging, descriptions, because they're just staring at these dashboards all day long. They were fully instrumented, and then trying to determine in this one little sector of the city, what's moving, because that's what they're in charge of within these products. And so it's if you really, really are willing to look at data in different ways, the amount of insight and the agility that you can drive is a true game changer for companies.
I love the word that you use, agility, right? So I think that right now the whole world is interacting in this data loop, right? So I think there is a feedback delay there.
Yes.
So I think what you're describing is another level of the efficiency, how we can make decisions so much quicker and accurate. That's fantastic. So what about, talk about the last pandemic, looking forward, right? What about, what do you think is going to stay? For example, I think you talk about remote working. Do you think that has impacted some of the company culture or productivity? And do you think this is the trend to stay?
Yeah, I think a lot like that Pandora's box you talked about. Once you expose a new concept to people, it's really hard to take it back. I think what many of us saw in many industries, and this is not true for all industries, is that people were as productive and sometimes more productive with a remote capability as they were coming into the office. I think what we've also found is, man, we miss each other, and there is a degree of productivity and collaboration and innovation that comes when you gather people together. So I am not a fan of statements that are way too much on one side or the other. Like, everything's going remote, everything is back to the office. It's like, no, it's always going to be a blend of the two. We just got, I think, much more aware of how effective we can be with a blended structure. Telemedicine is an example. I've been watching for 30 years as we've really struggled with, is it okay to try and diagnose people over a video feed, or do they have to be in person? And it depends. Some diagnoses can be done super well on a remote basis. Some need physical interaction. But for those that can be done effectively remotely, then why wouldn't you bring the best possible doctors to everybody, irrespective of whether they're in close proximity to those doctors? So I think we just really accelerated the concepts of what blended work and remote work looks like. And I don't think any of us have the answers on what the future looks like. I think we all have our opinions, but like every other iterative approach and feedback loop, I think as more and more people come back and we experiment with what meetings make sense in person, which ones don't, how often do we need people together, what are the new protocols, I think it will evolve organically, like everything else.
Yeah, so you talk about the telemedicine in some other industry as well. So what areas of technology that you feel most excited about looking forward?
Well, at Splunk, we have been pounding the table about the power of cloud. And it's no surprise to any investor that we have been going through a massive transformation from being a provider that gives software for a customer to manage to being someone that manages on behalf of the customer in the cloud. And as overwhelming the drumbeat is on cloud right now, I still think we're at the early innings of that. The number of workloads that are in the public cloud versus those that are still managed through private data centers, the bulk are still in private data centers. So there's a lot more innovation that's going to happen there. But looking beyond that, there's a couple of different areas that we've also been focused on. One is edge processing, I think is really coming into its own, which is a little bit against that public cloud piece, or is complementary to it, I guess. There are workloads that really should be distributed and very close to the activity, and there are workloads that can be centralized on public cloud. And what ARM and Intel and NVIDIA and a whole host of other organizations are doing right now to really try and facilitate edge processing, especially with 5G and low Earth orbiting communications. And I think that whole avenue is going to open up a ton of new use cases that have been difficult before then. And we've got a whole strategy around edge that we're excited about. Machine learning, I know that everyone's been talking about AI and machine learning. It's still much like cloud. There's a lot of talk. There's not a lot of activity still. We're still in the early innings of that. I think we've done a pretty good job over the past 2 or 3 years of trying to help in our core use cases, cybersecurity teams, IT operations teams get ahead of issues. There are patterns within data that if you really understand them and correlate them effectively and apply the right machine learning, you can predict before a failure. You can often predict vulnerabilities that could be potential breaches. But there's so much more we can do. If you look at the average finance department, HR department, marketing department, the amount of machine learning and predictive capability that they are utilizing is still pretty gosh darn low. The world is really excited about robotic process automation, RPA, great segment. A lot of AI to be done there, right? I mean, they're automating kind of rote processes in many cases. Just think about what happened 3 or 4 years from now, where well before a blip on sales, you've already looked around the corner and actually seen that because you have so many different signals and are taking corrective actions in advance of the actual event happening. So edge, ML, and then through that, really much more aggressive distributed data. People were kind of consumed right now with the data lake and bringing all data together. Like every other, too much on one side. I've never seen that be the case. There are 16 different categories of data tools in the world today. Relational database, data warehouse, ledger systems, indexing systems. And within those 16 categories, there's well over 350 different vendors. And you ask, well, why? Well, because they all do different things. We need data striped in different ways across those purpose-built systems, which means less centralization, more distribution of data that I think ML and edge processing will continue to emphasize as well.
Interesting. So, I learned a lot today, I think. So in terms of what you described, the data pool, the data lake, right? Do you think there will be a process of consolidation or introduce an industry standard?
So we've heard that all of us in the data field have gone back and forth on this centralized data thing for a while. And I always start the fundamental question of what are you trying to achieve? Like, why do you want a data lake? Are you trying to save costs? Like, what assumptions do you have that you think are going to make that the right answer? And what I've seen in my 30 years in data is we're, like everything else, we're going the opposite direction. We're creating more niches of data tools because they all serve different purposes. And Splunk is a good example where we have done an excellent job of bringing together unstructured and highly volatile data that most people don't care about, machine data and other types of data. And we do have a lot of customers that create these big data lakes of that data, but it's one of many data lakes within that customer. And even in that case, we wind up with 30, 40, 50 different pools of that same type of data.
Wow.
Because we want it close to the end user. The manufacturing team wants a cut of that data that they're going to play with close to them, and it's going to be striped in a slightly different way for the security team, a slightly different way for the sales team. And as long as we keep lowering the cost of storage, lowering the cost of compute, which we've seen on a steady trend for 20, 30 years, then it shouldn't matter if you've got all those data pools. What matters is what insights are you getting? What actions are you getting? How are you enhancing your revenue? How are you serving your customers better? How are you reducing costs more effectively? And that's really our guiding light on focus is stay close to the customer. Don't chase a concept because it's an intriguing technological concept. Try and chase it in a way that's practical for customers.
Very good. So going back to the macro here, we have seen this recovery, like going up, nicely and but slowly, and worker returns slowly. So what are you optimistic about, and what still worries you?
I am mostly optimistic about everything. I think there are a lot of short-term worries, like what's going to happen with inflation and what's going to happen on the geopolitical spectrum. Are China and America going to figure out a way to operate better together? And all those things carry risk. But when I really look at the trajectory of the past century or two and what we've seen over the past 25 years, we are still so early on how we're going to optimize most of the things that are important to us in life. Even with all the intensity around sustainability and environmental issues. And it deserves to be there, and there's a lot of potential concern based on the data we're seeing. The amount of application of what we have in front of us is still extremely light. We are not living nearly as sustainably as we could with the technology that we have around us. So when I think at the acceleration we've seen on digital transformation in just 20 months because of a forced issue, if we can keep that focus as a globe, and no country has a lock on this, right? We're all trying to drive innovation and more data-driven insights and more software-oriented delivery. I think that we'll continue to see problems that we once thought were insurmountable, like coming up with a potential vaccine to a deadly disease in, if you really look at what they did, it was 6 days. It was a 6-day process. If any of you haven't read Code Breakers, it's an awesome book that goes through a group of mRNA scientists and professors getting together. And it took another 6-7 months before you saw Moderna and Pfizer come out with their vaccines. But I mean, that is miraculous. It was 30 years of investment to get to that miracle. And we've got that all over the place. And we're just getting to the tipping point in energy storage and energy distribution and transportation and logistics and delivery and education and medicine that many decades of investment I think we'll keep seeing these incredible overnight successes that are really decades in the making.
So we just get started.
I think we're just getting started.
Yes, okay.
As long as we don't get in our own way as a species, like it's there for us, and I think our biggest risk is our fear and our lack of comfort, because there's a lot of things that are difficult for people to understand that look like they go contrary to things that we've seen in the past. Are we going to be open-minded about those? Are we going to approach those with a growth mindset? Or are they going to scare us because they're patterns we don't recognize? And I've never seen, I think it's impossible, that time, from what we can tell, goes forward only. I think it's impossible to go back. But we've got this perspective often of, I want to go back to what it was like in the 50s because it was so much better back then. And it's like, it's a nonsensical thought. You can't. You've got to move forward. So how do you keep moving forward and iterate and learn? And we've got a lot of learnings on how to do growth a little bit more sustainably.
I think that growth with sustainability, right? I think that's a fantastic phrase here. So a lot of our client today, audience today, are in Asia Pacific. So what is your view in Asia?
We are super excited about Asia. It's still less than 10-15% of our revenues, so a lot of opportunity there. What I'm excited about with Asia Pacific is the degree of innovation that happens because it's such a diverse region, so many different countries, so many different cultures, that it really facilitates for companies that are willing to approach Japan in the way that you need to be successful in Japan, and South Korea in a different way, and China and India and Australia and Singapore. The openness across those countries in the region to experiment and to really try and be technologically forward, I find really refreshing. There's a lot of energy to iterate quickly and to lean on technology, and the way that they are trying to utilize technology based on the dynamics of their own local region or country, I think provides a super interesting experimentation pool. And we've seen it. The insights have come out of Australia versus those from Hong Kong versus those from Japan are very different. So a lot of learning for us to bring back and see what is usable across regions outside of Asia Pac or cross-fertilized within Asia Pac. But I see it as a super strong growth area for any company, that's willing to spend the time. For Western companies, there's a little bit more effort to be empathetic and to really try and understand and make sure you've brought the right people in that are local and close to those countries. But really amazing set of potential there.
Very good. Yeah. Thank you so much, Doug. Great insights. And I look forward to hopefully we can have the discussion next year in Asia in person.
It'd be great to do in person.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lily.
Yeah.